Hello and welcome to this bonus edition of Soap Scoop. We are reacting to what we've just watched on the telly, and some of you may have even tuned in at 7 a.m. for this special Corrie flash forward mystery where we finally now know who the 5 doomed potential victims are when a murder takes place on the 23rd of April with the backdrop of Carla and Lisa's wedding. Already, Chloe, this is the most dangerous wedding in Soapland.
Well, we were expecting Becky, we were expecting Peter, we were expecting all kinds of drama, and now there's been a murder. But all I can say is I'm quite relieved that it doesn't seem to have affected the wedding. It all seems to have gone ahead.
Yes, absolutely. The fireworks are surely confirmation that this wedding has happened and that Peter Barlow hasn't just walked in and said, I object to this wedding. So, yeah, we can assume that it's gone ahead, especially as Betsy as well seems to be going out clubbing on the night of her mum's wedding.
Yeah, that's a bit weird, isn't it? I've never, well, I mean, not young anymore, but I've never gone to a wedding and thought, I'll go clubbing afterwards. Surely the fun is the wedding disco, with the DJ.
I know. Well, I mean, we'll have to wait and see how that all pans out. But very happy for Swarla if it has happened. But we now have the spotlight on these 5 people who we've discussed at some length, haven't we, about whether, because we knew about this before the flash forward actually aired, and we've kind of gone through and I think the majority of people that we thought might be in the frame are on the list.
Yeah, I think they're all characters who have made a lot of enemies. They're probably characters that viewers at home would quite like to see 6 feet under. I know there's a few unpopular ones in the mix. But yeah, I mean, they're all big characters, aren't there? There's no one in there that you'd go, well, they're the obvious one because they're the ones that are kind of easily disposable. When I look at that lineup, I'm thinking, I actually don't know that I want to lose any of them.
No, I mean, the most obvious contender to die for me is Theo. And also as well, watching that flash forward, it felt like everybody else had scenes where the dialogue was very deliberate, like, oh, you don't know how far I will go, and that
Maggie, that classic from Maggie.
Yeah, and even Ben had quite a few lines like that. Oh, that'll be the death of you, like things like that. So, but whereas Theo and Todd's was just still bubbling on at the rate that we've been seeing in recent weeks. And do you know what? I was watching it, and obviously Todd had just got back from that run, hadn't he, in the present day? And I was thinking he'd run so many miles that he told Theo, and I was thinking, why don't you just keep running? Surely, like that should, he comes back to, and I suppose that is something that the show is exploring, that people like are almost in this hostage situation. They can't escape these relationships. But that was like an overriding feeling that I had. But then when I saw him kind of twiddling the knife, I was thinking, if you're so unhappy that you are considering murder, then why have you not taken another avenue out? Why do you feel like that is the only way out?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because I think up to the wedding, I fully was bought into this idea that kind of Todd felt trapped and he couldn't leave. And I think there's some statistic that I think someone in that situation like attempts to leave about 7 times, I think it is, before they actually break free. But I think Todd got so far with Billy thinking, he's my confidant and I'm going to leave and it's all going to be okay, that I actually felt like he was at that point where he could break away. But now with Billy gone, I suppose that person has left and he's feeling a bit vulnerable again. But I mean, Theo is just so awful. When you were listening to him calling him like a pig and, oh, what, you're always a child, and is it daddy issues or mummy issues? And like, he makes, this is why I do kind of love watching Theo, because he makes me sick. Like, it's actually like vile, the stuff that comes out of his mouth, that he makes my skin crawl. I mean, James Cartwright's doing an amazing job, because I just think he's horrendous to watch. So in some ways, I would love him to be the murder victim, because I know a lot of people will feel maybe cheated, that not getting kind of true justice. Theo's so awful that I just think, kill him, just kill him.
Yeah, for me, he's the most likely candidate. I feel like the others have all got avenues in which their stories could go to. But equally, Theo is stood there underneath that street light, and you kind of think, well, for all we know, he could be the murderer.
Well, that's another theory going around, isn't it? That actually one of the people in the lineup is going to be the killer. There's not maybe just a body in that lineup. Maybe there's a killer as well. And I could see it. I mean, we've seen him leave Billy to die. And I think that it wasn't an accident what he did with Billy. He purposefully clicked that seatbelt back in, and it was maybe not premeditated, but it was definitely meditated, and I think Theo has got that potential to kill again, in my mind anyway, if he felt like Todd was being taken away from him. And certainly if more people are going to notice what's happening with Todd, then maybe he's going to start to kind of think, I'm threatened here. I'm going to have to kind of fight back a little bit. I have to say, when you mentioned Theo standing there kind of underneath the light in the corner shop, the spinny camera did make me a little bit dizzy at the end of the old episode tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely threw everything at that episode. I think with Theo as well, if they have him kill again and then maybe again, they turn him from a domestic abuser into a serial killer, which I will say I don't think worked out for EastEnders when they did it with
No, not at all. No, I think there was a lot of flack for that, and I think it changes the story, doesn't it? Because I think when we have these like really, I want to say heartfelt, kind of emotionally driven stories that are very true to life, and then they turn into a serial killer plot, it goes from being kind of very grounded, very realistic, like they work with charities and so on, to then suddenly being quite a, I don't mind a soapy storyline, but it's one thing to turn your very important educational storyline into a campy, soapy, there's the serial killer, there's Richard Hillman. I mean, if Richard Hillman had been abusing Gail and then gone and whacked Maxie, and it would have been a very different story and not the one we remember so fondly. So I think, turning him into a killer again would be a misstep, I think. But I mean, I certainly believe he's got it in him. But at the moment, I think I would prefer to leave it as is, because I think it's been one of the best soap storylines we have at the moment. It's really strong, and I think it would do a disservice to the story that's been told so far. So yeah, I would rather not turn killer again. But as I said, I would quite like to see him clobbered over the head or some kind of revenge taken anyway.
Well, it's funny because obviously we've seen this rivalry brewing between him and Carl. And recently on the podcast, we kind of were discussing who was the worst villain. And actually, now that they're going toe to toe, who are you rooting for in that scenario? And as awful as Carl has been to Debbie, equally doing awful things at the Corriedale crash that has now propelled her on this awful journey in prison. In a Carl versus Theo situation, I'm completely on Carl's side. So we could be looking, because Carl was stood there, wasn't he, at the end, looking like he could be a potential victim, but could also have been a murderer. I wonder whether he will be the one to finish Theo, and the nation kind of, not that we should encourage that sort of behaviour, but almost cheering
him on,
cheering Carl on. Yes, yeah, so I'd prefer almost Carl to go down that road than be murdered, because I don't believe for 100% that this is Carl that is going to be killed. He has got so much further to go with the Debbie storyline that I would be really unhappy if he's the murder victim.
I would feel incredibly cheated, because he's got to be there right to the end of Debbie's storyline, in my point of view, and maybe even a bit further, because I think her death is going to rock him in a way maybe he's not even expecting. We saw, obviously, when the truth came out about her being his mum, I certainly felt there were times in those scenes where I did actually feel like quite a lot of empathy towards him, because he felt like his whole life had been ruined by not having that love from a mother, because he thought Elaine just, there was something wrong with him and Elaine didn't love him for that reason. And it turns out the reason is because she wasn't actually his mum. And I actually felt that was quite heartfelt and moving in some ways. And then, of course, he turns around and makes sure Debbie's banged up, and then you think, maybe not. But no, I really don't want Carl to die. I think he's, again, a cracking character, really watchable. He could go down multiple different paths. I mean, we've seen that kind of, there is a bit of good left in him, but the darkness is calling, So I think that's what's so interesting about him. He's vile, he's selfish, he's awful, but there is something still left in him. And I think if we explore that story with him and Debbie further, I think there's so much more mileage there to go. And although maybe him and Kevin sniping at each other could get a bit boring, although I did enjoy him sort of booing and hissing Kevin in the pub in this episode, I do not want him to die. I really don't. It would be far too soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many different layers to Carl as well. I think once that storyline with Debbie plays out, I think we'll all come around to him. I think he's the baddie we are gonna love, even though we should not. There's just something very electric about him at the moment. Not that I necessarily thought that when he first came in. I was thinking, like, Abby, like, what are you doing? Not that I was particularly team Abby and Kevin, but I kind of wasn't on board with their affair at all. I didn't believe it. But
no, I was the same.
Actually, now that they've broken up, and he's just on this like one-man mission to just rock the street. I'm really enjoying him. And I think it's interesting as well that all the potential victims are kind of linked. So Theo into Carl is also having a bit of a thing with Jodie.
Yeah.
But again, I think there's still so much more to go for Jodie. So I almost don't think it's her either.
Yeah, Jodie's another one to watch, isn't she? And I think she's a bit like Carl in the sense that you can tell she's had a quite a messed up childhood or background, but there is darkness there. And I know I've seen a lot of speculation around that. Is she going to be the new Mad Maya? Is she going to be Corrie's version of Mina? Like, she's got all these trinkets, you know, her box of delights. Is that going to be linked to some past nefarious behaviour? Who knows at the moment? But there's so many unanswered questions of Jodie, and I think she's maybe going too fast too soon in terms of, like, you know, crawling all over David. But I think there's, again, loads to explore left with her, and I think it would be a shame for a sister to come in for Shona and then for us to lose that so quickly. April is not that far away, so I think it would be, again, far too soon to lose Jodie. But she's one who I don't know whether I see having a kind of redemptive arc. I can see it with Carl, but I wonder whether Jodie's just going to get darker and darker and darker until there's nowhere left to go. I'm just so intrigued about all her secrets and who she is and what's her game? Like, what's she up to? Like, is she trying to steal Shona's life, or is there something more to it? The whole thing with her dad is just, really unnerving, and I'm massively intrigued. So, and I think so far she seems like just a great character, brilliant actress. So she's another one that I'm like, nope, too soon, don't want to lose her yet.
She's absolutely stunning as well. I mean, if David Platt's 13-year-old self could look at his life now and see him basically caught in the middle of two beautiful sisters, one of which who maybe is a little bit unhinged, but he'd be thrilled. But I think that, with Jodie, I know you mentioned Emmerdale Mina, who is a fabulous character. And definitely the trinkets do point towards maybe she's going down a similar road, but she's also so far not got the energy of Mina, whereas there was something so off about, like, there's something so wild about Mina from the moment she stepped foot in the village, whereas Jodie's is a bit more understated. But the other thing, while we're on the subject of Emmerdale, we have heard that her link to Emmerdale Graham, your favourite character, is going to be explained. So I know they said no more crossover, but there's surely got to be something that brings these two into orbit again. Maybe Graham's the one stood over her, because that was his initial job, wasn't it? Was he killing her in Corriedale before
he was
crash?
Transporting her somewhere? I mean, we saw her knees in an episode of Emmerdale. Maybe we're going to see, like, Graham's shoulder or the back of Graham's head or something in Coronation Street. If we've been told there's no more crossover, then we're not going to see Adam Scarborough pop up in an episode of Corrie, but we may see, a hooded head or something that could be Graham, maybe. I don't know. I'm really finding it hard to merge those two together, because Jodie seems quite, I mean, she's not normal, clearly, but she seems quite grounded as a character. Like, there's obviously something very troubled going on. There's obviously something quite, vengeful about her. And I love the sort of sneaky way she's playing with Lily and all that kind of stuff and setting up the kind of rivalry in the family. But she doesn't seem from the same world as Graham. Do you know what I mean? So I'm finding it hard to kind of blend the two in my head.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll find out a bit more about that. I can't see her being a victim for murder. I think there's more to be explained. We should talk about Maggie, because she was going for it, great guns in that episode. The camp dialed up to the max.
Yeah,
really planting the seeds there that she could be a murderer, never mind a victim. Pauline McGlynn is such a great signing for Corrie. So you could look at it two ways. You could think, okay, well, you wouldn't want to get rid of her. She's essentially the same ilk as Blanche and Evelyn, and we're kind of missing a character right now like that. But on the same token, maybe she's just signed up for a short stint, and it was to come in and do like a big story and ground the Driscolls in the Rovers, and then have her death or her being a murderer could then give them plenty of story to deal with with regards to the fallout. So what do you think?
I probably would lean towards the latter, just because when she was in EastEnders, it wasn't for very long, and you never know, do you? And I know, like, the acting world is so difficult for jobbing actors to get work, but she's such a big name that I can't imagine it'll be difficult for her to get work outside of Corrie. That makes me think she's in demand. There's bound to be other roles out there that she'd love to do, and whether she would stay on Corrie long term, who knows? My feeling is that maybe she would want to explore other avenues, but then maybe if she's fallen in love with Corrie and Maggie, maybe she'll stay. Maggie's a funny one. I'm not sure. She's a bit odd. Like sometimes I think I'm warming to her. Other times I'm like, actually, she's really getting on my nerves now. And so I've got to say, she's probably one that I wouldn't be that bothered if she was the victim, just because I haven't warmed to her as a character. Like I kind of enjoyed the Driscolls and I've enjoyed their introduction, but she's just like a little bit grating at times, like a little bit, whether it's she just hasn't bedded in yet. She's maybe a bit like how Evelyn was at the start, where she was quite sharp, and they maybe need to kind of tone her down a little bit. I don't know, because like the bickering with Eva, I just am like, leave Eva alone. Like, I really love Eva, and I just feel like Maggie's just a bit much sometimes. I'm like, I feel like I need to go and take some ibuprofen after I've watched her. You know what I mean? Like, just sometimes she's just a bit like, oh. But I am intrigued as to the whole, pushing her husband down the stairs thing. Like, what's this thing with Ken Barlow's cabinet? Like, what did she see in there? And I'm sure that's all going to come out. But then what's next for her? Is she just going to be nagging about her son and her grandsons all the time? I'm kind of over that now. So, yeah, she's the one that I'm like, if it has to be any of them, then I'm quite happy to sacrifice her. I feel a bit bad saying that, but she's probably my least favourite out of all the options.
Speak your truth, Chloe. That's how you feel. You've
just got to be honest.
You've got to be honest, yeah. Well, the last one is Megan, who I noticed was sporting not only a bloody nose, but a fringe.
Fringe, yeah.
I was like,
look.
I know. So what do we think? I mean, yes, and like Theo, there's probably more motive for someone to want to harm her, given what's been going on with Will. But also there's this issue of pregnancy, and we've spoken about this before. It's pretty grim if she's the murder victim. So what do you think?
Yeah, I can't see a pregnant woman being killed. That's if to say that the pregnancy continues. We don't know yet. There's a couple of months to go.
Or if it's real.
Well, actually, that's true. We have seen her in the clinic, haven't we? And we've heard her word for it. But then why would she lie? Like, to me, her pregnancy makes her situation 100 times worse because, it's bound to come out that it's not Daniel's, and then she's going to get arrested. So, I mean, I think that Megan is fantastic character again. Like another person that I know we're going to lose at some point because she has to go. But isn't she brilliant at manipulating and just being so cold and cutting? And I mean, actress Beth Nixon is doing an amazing job, I think, particularly when we saw her like against Sam, like the stare she gave him and the look, and when she sort of was saying A star or whatever she said, I was like, oh, you're evil, you're actually evil. But I love it, she's so good. I don't know what it is, I always enjoy the evil characters so much because and the actors always say that it's the most fun to play, and you can tell that just being that vile to people must be a delight.
Think that she could be in the frame, but also it's difficult, isn't it? Because these people that are committing awful crimes, you kind of think, well, yeah, there is the soap level of justice, but should they also be sending a message of no, like if someone was to speak out and actually go to the police or confide in someone else, then there is a route out of this that doesn't involve violence. So that's a tricky one as well.
She's the one I would like to see locked up, I think, because I think there'll be a lot of people watching, and I'm imagining that the story's going to cross over with Tim's storyline, where he had that kind of inappropriate relationship with the old woman. Whether people will watch it and think every young lad had a crush on their female teacher, like it's just normal and it's fine, and so I wonder whether Megan will need to go to prison to kind of prove the point that it's not okay, and that Will need to learn as well, because at the moment he's still very much under the impression that it's all fine and he wasn't groomed and it was true love and all the rest. So I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because I would always prefer a kind of juicier story than a court case. It's like with Theo, I've always said from day one, like I'd rather see Theo get soap justice than real justice, just because I just think it'd be more interesting to watch. For both storylines, you can see the case for properly finishing the storyline with true justice. But then for someone like Todd, I wonder whether he'd just rather see Theo dead and gone. But for Megan, I just think maybe there needs to be a lesson there, and maybe there's kind of more satisfaction in her going down for it. And again, we're 2 months away. It still feels like there's further to go in this storyline, because if the baby, if Megan does have the baby, then that's going to cause even more problems. Like, what's going to happen to the baby? Are the Driscolls going to have to look after the baby? Like, what's going to happen? And I think, again, there's a lot more mileage in Megan as a character. So yeah, she's another one that's like, I'd be sad to lose so soon, but I suppose the story's got to end at some point, and we don't want to keep watching her just being vile to Sam and being awful to Will. And yeah, so it's got to end at some point.
It does. Now, soaps do like to pull the rug out from underneath us. And we've been discussing this idea that maybe none of these people are in fact murdered. Maybe rather than it's who's dead, they're actually the potential killers. And we know that this is going to go from who's murdered to a who done it. But we do like to throw in some wild card theories. Now, my wild card for a murderer is that actually on her mother's wedding day, Betsy stumbles across this body on the cobbles, and they're not dead, but she leans over to see how they are. And that giant corsage that is on her bridesmaid dress accidentally smothers the person and they die, which is why it's so upset in the police room. And, while we're on the subject, I don't believe that Betsy would have signed off on that bridesmaid dress.
No, I don't believe that Carla and Lisa would have done either. It's definitely giving kind of 1985 prom rather than classy Chariot Square wedding, isn't it, really?
I know. Maybe she made it herself because she's an up-and-coming...
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, she could have done. Or she kind of, stole some spare material from Underworld and whipped something up last minute. But they've had months to prepare this outfit. Like, why is she wearing something that looks very... And she's quite I would have thought she was quite trendy and it's a bit of a weird outfit. But anyway.
The flash forward of this dress and how it comes to be is equally an interesting mystery. Never mind the murder.
Do you know what I would have loved? More kind of hints about, not even necessarily about the wedding, but about like a little bit about the future. Like maybe we'd see something a bit unusual and you're like, somewhat, like you say, Megan's haircut, or something a bit odd that you're like, oh, that's intriguing. I would have loved a few more hints about what April's going to look like. But I suppose they don't want to jump too far ahead in the future. We're not going to have like flying cars like Back to the Future or something like that, but just something that would have hinted towards what April is going to look like on the street would have been nice.
Yeah, actually, I suppose it did take me a moment, because you had the flash forward and then it cut to real life, and it was, well, not real life, you know what I mean, present day. For a minute there, I was like, oh, okay, we're back in the present day. This isn't part of the thing. Any other wild cards?
My theory is that, because usually we've done whodunits, we've seen loads of them, and normally we always get like an official lineup of the suspects, and it's never one of the people on the list, So that was my immediate thought, that okay, maybe it's not going to be someone on the list. I would feel a bit cheated if it wasn't, I have to say. But my biggest suspicion at the moment is Mal, because he's come from nowhere. And he's going to upset a lot of people, kind of all Bernie's side of the family. He's like involved with Roy. If he's going to be doing electrician stuff all around the street, maybe he could go around every house and do something dodgy with the wiring. I don't know. But I just feel like he's a bit odd. He's a bit random. He's also, we keep talking about how all these people in the lineup are amazing characters and we don't want to lose them. If we're looking at potential victims that we don't not necessarily care about, but if we have to lose them from the show, some randomer that's just rocked up a few months ago and made a load of enemies, are we going to be that sad to lose Mel? I don't think so. But then I suppose if he is the victim, it hasn't got as much impact. But yeah, he's a bit of a question mark at the moment, because he's really creepy and I could definitely see him coming to a bit of a sticky end.
Absolutely. He is really causing a bit of a stir, and I can see, what if he goes for Bernie and she has to fend him off? That is definitely a good one. Something I read online, actually, somebody had a theory that Cassie was going to be the murderer, because everybody knows that Claire Sweeney is leaving, and that she might be a bit of a... this is a woman that at one point was poisoning Ken Barlow. Not in the same villainous way that maybe Theo would do something like that, but but she's got form for crossing lines, and maybe she doesn't mean to do it. I think that's quite an interesting theory, given that we know she's leaving.
Yeah, because actually, although we know there's going to be a body, we don't know the circumstances. We don't know it's actually going to be a murder, do we? It could be an accident. It could be like one of those things where it ends up turning into like a cover-up or a, an accidental push or whatever it is. So yeah, I hadn't thought about Cassie actually, because I was trying this morning thinking, well, who's leaving, and do we know anyone that's like already on their way out? And I was thinking I couldn't think of anyone, but yeah, Cassie, I hadn't thought of her, but she's not on my radar. I just can't imagine it. I sort of think like that would be really left field, like almost like what would be the point if she did it. But I wonder if there are any more exits that are coming up that we might hear about, and then it will be like, oh, well, there's going to be related to that person. Hopefully they manage to keep it under wraps, because I always feel like, a bit like with Corrie, we kind of thought that Billy might die because we knew that Daniel Brocklebank was leaving. But I think it doesn't necessarily mean that the killer is going to leave the show. I mean, if it's going to be an accident, if it's going to be something, I guess, forgivable. I mean, look at Gary. He's managed to stay in Corrie, and we know he's been responsible for death. So it is possible that you can kill someone in soap and be forgiven, or get away with it, or stay in the show for a long time.
There's a lot of them at the moment. I found Emmerdale, EastEnders, they're all kind of kicking about. It never used to be a thing in the past, did it? It's like you had to face some sort of comeuppance, whether it was soap justice or real justice. But now the leniency for people that have taken other characters' lives is a little bit loose.
Well, my thinking, if the victim happens to be Theo, then my thinking was, and I keep touting this theory for every whodunit we have, but I'm going to go for it again. A kind of Murder on the Orient Express with Theo, where everyone who loves Todd gives Theo a bit of a whack, and then eventually someone has the final blow, but they all think it was all of them. So you've got Georgina, you've got Christina, you've got Sarah, Summer, Bernie even maybe, throw in the whole lot, because I think the street would rally around Todd a lot, and I think if they discovered what Theo had been up to, they'd all want to have a go. And so I could kind of see that happening. And then as an audience member, I'd be like, good on you, well done. Like I don't need to see any of them go to prison for it, because to be fair, that is soap justice. Theo's gone. All of you lot that gave him a whack, that's fine by me. Go for it.
I do love a bit of Murder on the Orient Express energy. So if that turns out to be the case, then you called it, Tim's. This is your moment. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to our special bonus reaction episode to the Corrie Flash Forward. We want to hear your theories. Please pop in the comments who you think it is, any wild cards that you want to throw in there. And we will be following it all the way till the 23rd of April, where hopefully Swarla have their happy ending. I'm still wondering if Peter Barlow is going to pop up, but not if there's rockets going off in the sky. It can't be. So thank you very much. Like, subscribe, comment, and do tune in to our usual podcast offering tomorrow, where we give you all the new spoilers coming out, and we'll speak to you next time.